Our special guest, the next special guest, needs no introduction. Dr. Aman Chugh from India, father of financial markets, financial planning, and risk management. Dr. Aman Chugh stands as a reputed name in the world of financial markets. With over 1.2 million searches on Google and over 10,000 fan following over social media, he is also one of the youngest chartered accountants of India and a first and only PhD on currency and interest rate derivatives. He is currently the most sought consultant in the corporate and financial world on such domains. He has to his name the credit of being the first and only author in the world to have written a book on financial derivatives. An honor to be sharing this space with you, sir. A very warm welcome to you. I would now invite Dr. Aman Chugh for for his deliberation, please. Over to you, sir.
Namaskar hai, Jai Hind hai. It's a pleasure for me as well to be amongst you all, galaxy of stars from various parts of the world in this tough times of pandemic. I'll be sharing my views on three broad aspects related to the pandemic's impact on education, but I think I'll be going first of all from how the globalization is moving into protectionism. So that will be my first phase of it. Second, I'll be speaking on the digital divide, which I'm sure a lot many amongst you all from different parts of the world will be stating about what is happening in the digital divide of the education perspective in respective parts of your country education system. And third, I'll also try to share my inputs about how do I look out for the going forward disruption in the economies from here. Stating about the first broad point, in the earlier times, most of the economies were growing together, and that's why we called it as a globalization or an inclusive growth in terms of most of the parts of the world growing together in terms of US, UAE, India, Southeast Asia, etc. But now, because of this pandemic impact, each one of the economy will try to concentrate on their own growth perspective, even if it means at the cost of others. So that means while we were earlier speaking about the globalization and the inclusive growth, but now because of this pandemic challenges, most of the economies will try to only think about themselves, in the sense that because each one of the economy has now their own inherent challenges which they have been engrossed into because of the growing pandemic challenges. Say for example, some of the few economies are facing the inflationary pressures, some of the economies are facing unemployment pressures, and in any case they are all allied, interrelated. Hence, what will happen is, because of these challenges, some of the economies facing high inflation. Say for example, US is already facing 30 years high of inflation. So that means the inflationary pressure in US is as much as was not seen in the last 30 years. Similarly, we can ignore US for the time being because US is quite a strong economy with a $23 trillion of a GDP, and their growth is also quite robust. But how about other parts of the world such as Eurozone? Europe growth is hardly anything, maybe hardly a 0.5% of a growth, but the inflation is at around 5 to 6%. So that means what will happen, like the Eurozones, etc., even the countries in Africa, even some of the other emerging nations, including Brazil, even what is happening with Turkey, we all know 50% of the currency has already been wiped off. So that means these sort of all chaos across different economies will lead to some new invasions across territories, some new groupisms, some new friends, and some new foes. Say, for example, never ever we had heard or we never imagined that Israel would get in good terms with the Middle East countries. But now we are seeing Israel is in good terms with Saudi Arabia, UAE. In fact, that has imposed some other tensions on UAE and Saudi as well. We can see in the recent times, uh, all sort of drone strikes on the oil bases of Saudi. So that means the political shift in the Middle East will be seen from here because of the pandemic impact. I'm sure we'll speak about education as well, but I'm just trying to correlate the base, what is happening in the paradigm shift of the economy of the world. So that means first we can see these type of shifts. Second, in fact, what US did abruptly withdrawing from Afghanistan is ideally will lead to more chaos in the Central Asia and the Middle East territories of the world. So that means US might have planned it in such a manner that if it withdraws its troops from Afghanistan abruptly, this will lead to a further chaos in those type of territories. Maybe that could lead to a supply of weaponaries and will be helpful for US going forward. But these type of growing tensions within Middle East and Central Asia will also ignite few other challenges, such as we have already seen one of those challenges in the form of Russia, Kazakhstan, Russia, Ukraine, etc. Similarly, on these lines, if we talk about even a lot many emerging nations, developing economies, from in fact, a few of my worthy guests also represent their countries, I'm sure the chaos will be unimaginable, because these type of paradigm shift in terms of what is happening in the Middle East, what is happening in Central Asia, what is happening in Eurozone, and what is happening around the world will lead to a paradigm shift in the groupisms being formed, new groups being formed. On the broad second aspect, which I wish to cover today, is ideally the digital divide, where most of our developing economies, emerging economies will see that will not be able to have inclusive education. I am sure many amongst you will all be speaking about their own economies, the challenges in the educational times, etc. But I wish to put my three inputs on this broad second aspect. One, but obvious, the physical barriers to the schools and colleges, because that will lead to more chaos in the spread of pandemic that we are already witnessing. Second, the challenge is, even if we are talking about developing an online infrastructure at school and college level, how do we ensure the online infrastructure at the students household level? Say for example, if we talk about Indian economy, less than 15% of the rural household, I'm not talking about the students, I'm talking about the less than 15% of the rural household in India, they have internet facilities. So that means 85% of rural households do not have any internet facilities at all. Second point, within the urban area as well, less than 25% of the urban households have access to internet facilities. So that means 75% of the urban households also do not have access to the internet facilities. I'm talking about internet facilities. I am not talking about the access to smartphones, the laptops, or maybe education in terms of how do we use them, etc. So that is one of the other challenges. And I was reading a report as well. Approximately 30 to 60% of the students across world shall be deprived of education because of, even despite if we set up the infrastructural capabilities in the school and the college level, even despite we are able to train our teachers, even despite we are able to upgrade our educational system on the institutional basis, but what do we do at the rural household or the urban household level? And that is one of those challenges which I don't foresee to be addressed in the immediate times. On the third phase of aspect which I wish to address by is, my concern is about the kind of disruption in economies which is going to happen from here, and which will lead to additional disruption in the educational system. I'll share my couple of inputs on this. First broad input is, during all these years, especially for the last 20, 30 years, China became a manufacturing hub. Almost 30% of the global production is done in China. So that means all the major units of the world, all the major raw materials of the world are being consumed by China. The coal from Australia, the copper, iron, steel, the oil from the Middle East, etc., etc., have been all imported by China because China was the 30% or is the 30% of the production hub of the world. So that means China got this whole excess of raw material from across the globe, and these all economies, they never thought of an alternative market other than China, and they were all busy in supplying whole of their goods across to China. And China was able to set up the bases, like all those products which are manufactured in US or maybe manufactured in Japan. I'm talking about before 1980s. All of a sudden, I think someone has gone on mute, unmute maybe.
Requesting all the attendees to kindly turn off their microphone. Mr. Rish Ketu, I think. Kindly turn off your microphone, please. Thank you.
So this is also one of those challenges on the online education system as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah? Okay. So what I was trying to in brief was that most of the countries of the world were overly reliant on China, were overly dependent upon China, first to supply their own produce of the raw materials, etc. to China. Second, China was able to set up the bases from the US and the Japan within its own country. And China was able to make an impact on the kind of product and the kind of pricing which maybe economies of scale of China was able to do in the last 20 years. Now, what is going to happen is, while most of the countries are reeling under their own challenges of inflation, growth, unemployment, and suddenly they have also realized that, okay, something is bad, what is happening from China, something evolved from China, etc. And these all reports are still pending, so I'm not commenting on that, but at least most of the countries of the world would love to move away from China, at least, to set up their own manufacturing bases, to set up their own service lines. And for that to happen, there will be a lot of chaos. So that means, this means a lot of supply chain disruption will happen from here. Say, for example, in the last 2 years, we have already seen what is happening with the semiconductor chips industry, the automobile sector industry, the household white goods industry. And this will also have a rippling effect on other industries as well, because as soon as most of the economies will be able to will try to set up their own manufacturing bases or service lines, etc., that means they are saying no to China. That cannot be done in a single day or a single year. It will take a decade for this to happen. And for a decade for this to happen, that means there is going to be a supply chain disruption on power, on semiconductors, on white goods, etc. Because even on pharma ingredients also, even on healthcare equipments also, even on mobile industry or telecom industry as well. And that is going to be quite chaotic. Now, within this, the second broad point, ideally, because of whole of this challenge, which we are talking about away from China, there are some new groupisms which are being, or new collaborations which are being coming up. Say, for example, this is the second point within the last third phase. Earlier, Australia was able to supply its coal, etc. to China. But for the last 2 years, we have seen some sort of enmity between China and Australia. And China all of a sudden said that I'll not be importing the coal from Australia. And Australia was in the doldrums and the economy was in for a toss. And suddenly India stepped in. And India was able to procure a lot of Newcastle coal, which is one of the finest quality of coal from Australia. So that means these type of new collaborative arrangements will evolve. Now, what will happen is, there's an indirect message on this. Imagine a lot many traders who were importing goods from China and selling within their own countries. One fine day very soon, their shops are going to get closed. because the government will say, hello boss, no more products to be imported from China, so try to find out new supply chains. And all of a sudden, these all importers from China, these all traders from China, they will in across the globe, even in your countries as well, and this is what is happening in my country as well. So that means this will lead to a lot of businesses going for a toss, lot of new unemployment developing, because they will not be able to adopt their supply chain from China into a Australia or a Middle East, etc., because that will take time for adaptability in terms of the funding process, the documentation process, the legal process, etc. This is the second broad point. Third broad point. You know what? These all economies, they have realized that they will have to set up their own manufacturing bases. They have to set up their own service lines. But for that, they will have to require a lot of investment. And investment requires money. Speaking on the monetary terms, most of these economies who wish to do this, their budgets are in deficit. That means their expenditures are already more than their receipts. So how do they plan more investments? They will have to seek loan. But from where would they take loan? And that's what China was doing for the last few years. So I'm not complaining about only China. What I'm trying to state is what is the global parametric situation of the world. And that means if the most of these countries require loan to do a fresh investment, where do they go? Say, for example, what has happened with Sri Lanka in the recent times? And I'm sure this will happen with a lot many other countries, and this will lead to a triggering effect because there are so many NRIs, so many foreign nationals who are based out of these economies, and their employability, their challenges will also grow. Fourth broad point within this is that these all manufacturing and service line, if they have to set up new industries, assuming that they have thought of concentrating on their own domestic line of manufacturing, etc., they will have to adopt a lot of technology as well. And I don't know whether they have the immediate technical know-how of using robotics, the artificial intelligence, the big data analytics. That means the technology can be imported maybe, but how do we import the people who will be able to manage this technology? So that means that is one of the another chaos which will be coming from this time. Fourth broad point, or maybe the fifth broad point, this could lead to a lot many professionals above 40 years of age in your countries and in my countries to see the pressures in their jobs. Above 40 years of age, including me and you, we are going to face challenge in the next 5 to 10 years, because a lot many people who are in the industries, who are employed, and they might have graduated around 20 years back, all of a sudden in the next 5 years they will see, oh wow, my industry is getting disrupted and I do not have immediate upscaling or upskills which is required to get adapted or be continued in the industry. So that means a lot many matured people who are running their households, who have their kids in the mid 15s and 20s, and in the next 5 to 10 years they are going to face the heat, if not job losses, but at least they will face the heat of the pressure in their working jobs. So that means they will have more pressures from their bosses, from their organization. That will lead to chaos on their health as well, because they will be under pressure to perform. Similarly, imagine the students, especially in the last 5 to 10 years, who have just graduated or post graduated in your country, in my country, they will be simply caught in the disruptive world, because whatever kind of educational qualification they might have taken in the recent times, they will be immediately get caught, because they will come to know in the next 5 to 10 years that whatever they took around 5 to 10 years back, that is redundant. Now there is a challenge with these type of students who just graduated maybe or post graduated maybe before 5 to 10 years, as against the earlier category of people who are 40 years of age. The difference is the people who are 40 years of age at least have the maturity to lead the team. At least they can do some sort of managerial work. But what will happen with the young next generation who have just graduated or post graduated for the last 5 to 10 years and maybe would be in their 30s or 35s or 25s? They will be caught, they will be stuck in the next 5 years in this dilemma as to what do they do, and that is one of the chaos which is coming. Also, for the existing students as of now who are about to get graduated or post-graduated in today or maybe in the next 1 year, is that they are not sure what shall be done and what needs to be done going forward. You know what? The next point here is that going forward, the students skill set which we are talking about, that education should be continued in terms of bringing the setups, in terms of bringing the technology, the bringing the upscaling of the online education system at the school and college level. But what is the skill set which we are going to impart them? That is a big question, because the kind of technology adaptability which is arriving in the countries of yours and the country of mine, such as the robotics, the artificial intelligence, the big data analytics, these all technology adaptability will also be disruptive because they will change every 5 years. So that means, do you mean to say that we will be upgrading the skill set of the teachers first, and then the teachers will be able to deliver it to the students later on? So by the time you train the teachers, in the next 5 years, there is a new technology coming up. So you again set up the system, set go. So that means there is another chaos which is coming up in terms of the adaptability of the new learning. So that means it is not about upgrading the system only. It is not about the upgradation of your online educational system, because as I was mentioning earlier also, that this online system is not available to almost 85% of the rural household in your country and in my country, 75% of the urban household in your country, in my country. And apart from that, even if we make the system robust, what do we teach? That needs to be robust as well. And I don't think so that the educational institutions are quite ready to adapt and deliver in such a quick time. And you know what this will also lead to is the chaos in the people's earning capabilities, because a lot many people, while they will be leaving jobs, they will be feeling threatened to be leaving jobs in the next 5 to 10 years. So what they will try to do is, they will either go for excess saving today, or they will start investing in maybe some riskier assets to make quicker money, so that they feel that they can retire early, and that will lead to chaos in the financial markets also. In the last 2021, that means for the last 1.5 years, we could see all the markets of the world going up. So my money and your money might have already grown, but it will not be happening from here, because the paradigm shift of the world is going to change. In my last message maybe is, what do we do? Because I have already spoken quite about a lot of chaos and chaos and chaos. What needs to be done is cannot be centralized. So that means, if we talk about the collaborations between the governments of the two economies, or maybe we are waiting for the government or the institutionalized reforms coming up, yes, reforms will come up, but the new subset of the collaborations will have to be emerged. When I say subset of the collaborations, what I mean to say is, within your country and within my country, the educational institution will have to collaborate with their local industries. When I say local industries, I'm not talking about the big corporates. No, I'm talking about the local, micro, small, medium industries collaboration. Because the industry people will be knowing what kind of disruption, what kind of change in the economy is going to come, and what kind of skill set would they be requiring, and based on their subjects design, and also based on their subjects delivery. I'm making a 2 point. One, don't design the subjects, don't make your robust system without making the industry being consulted. Point number one. Point number two, you have consulted the industry, you have designed the subjects, but who delivers? Are we saying that we deliver when the industry designs the subject? No. There should be a collaborative arrangement, maybe a 30% or a 40% delivery by the teachers to build up the base, to be affectionate with the students, but the 60-70% of the delivery by the local industry, so that they are able to adapt, they are able to absorb these type of local kids of your educational institution in your local country. This is one change which we needs to be done. Second change, the subset, the next subset of the collaboration has to be amongst the countries, these type of informal networks, which I'm thankful to Richa ma'am to have taken a wonderful initiative to bring almost the galaxy of stars from 30 to 40 countries across globe. And maybe it should not stop here. What I mean to say is, in this modern world of online education, when we are talking about the digital, the online, etc., why don't we form a group? It can be a WhatsApp group or a Telegram group, and bring those ideas together and let this connection, let this relation continue for the betterment of the world. Thank you very much. Namaskar and Jai.
Thank you so much, sir. That was such a deep insights of the aspects that you addressed and spoke about. We had your views on this relevant subject and you gave it a total different shape, which we were clearly not much aware about. We look forward to learn from you in the future as well, but thank you so much for joining us today.